Yo, we are live. Also, currently, my voice for the people watching the VOD, my voice is dead. So it's just going to be an audiobook playing. So that way my voice doesn't die further. So, let me go ahead and start that. Also, the audiobook is a couple minutes in. And that's my bad. I just wanted to make sure it was when I was actually interested in before I started doing this. But, okay.
Taste for conversation. So do please spend some time with these young men. Do come here and visit us. Regard us as your friends, as your family even. With pleasure, Cephalus, I replied. I love talking to the very old. It's as if they're a long way ahead of us on a road which we too are probably going to have to travel. I feel we should learn from them what the road is like, whether it's steep and rough going, or gentle and easy. In particular, I'd very much like to hear how it strikes you, now that you've actually reached the time of life which the poets call old age, the threshold. What is your report on it? Would you call it a difficult time of life? I'll tell you exactly how it strikes me, Socrates. There's a group of us who meet fairly often. We're all about the same age, so we're following the words of the old proverb.
Also, yeah, this is a audio book. My voice is it's dying, so I'm trying to not use it as much, so that way I can talk more tomorrow and the next day, so my voice doesn't completely die. So currently, the audio book is The Republic by Pluto, or not Pluto, sorry, Plato. Yeah, it's the audiobook that the philosopher wrote. I feel like a lot of what he says is very good, but
when we meet, most of them start complaining. They say they miss the things they used to enjoy when they were young, and they recall their sexual exploits, their drinking, their feasting, and everything connected with those pleasures. They get upset, as if they'd suffered some great loss, as if then they had led a wonderful life, whereas now they're not alive at all. Some of them also complain about the lack of respect shown by their families towards old age, and under this heading they recite a litany of grievances against old age. I think they're putting the blame in the wrong place, Socrates. If old age were to blame, then not only would I have felt the same way about old age, but so would everyone else who has ever reached this age. And yet I've met several people who are not like this. Most notably, Sophocles, the poet. I was there once when someone asked him, "How is your sex life, Sophocles? Are you still capable of making love?"
hey, yo, bro. Yo, hopefully this book don't start acting crazy, bro. I'll have to stop listening. Hey, yo.
To a woman? "Don't talk about it, my good sir," was Sophocles' reply. "It is with the greatest relief that I've escaped it, like escaping from a fierce and frenzied master." I thought that a good reply at the time, and I still think it a good one now. Old age is altogether a time of great peace and freedom from that sort of thing. When our appetites fade and loosen their grip on us, then what happens is exactly what Sophocles was talking about. It is a final release from a bunch of insane masters. Both in this and in your relations with your family, there is only one thing responsible, and that is not old age, but your character. For those who are civilized and contented, then even old age is only a slight burden. Otherwise, for those who are not like this, both old age and youth prove hard to cope with. I was very impressed by what he said, and I wanted him to go on talking, so I prompted him further. "I suspect most people don't believe you, Cephalus, when you say that. They think it is not your character which makes old age easy for you, but the fact that you have plenty of money. The rich, they say, have many consolations. And there's some truth in what they say, but not as much truth as they think. Themistocles' famous saying is very much to the point here. A man from Seriphos started making disparaging remarks about him and telling him that his fame was due not to his own merits, but to those of his city. Themistocles' reply was that though he himself would never have been famous if he had been born in Seriphos, neither would the other man have been if he had been born in Athens. The same applies to those who are not rich and who find old age hard to bear. In poverty, even the right temperament will not find old age altogether easy, whereas the wrong temperament, even with the aid of wealth, will never be at peace with itself. What would you say is the greatest benefit you have derived from your possession of great wealth? I said. One which many people might not be inclined to believe if I told them, but you can take my word for it, Socrates, that when you are confronted by the thought of your own death, you are visited by fear and anxiety about things which never troubled you before. The stories told about what happens in Hades, that anyone who is unjust here will have to pay for it there. Stories you once laughed at begin to trouble your mind. That's why I attach the greatest importance to the possession of money, not for everyone, but for those of good character. If you want to avoid defrauding people or lying to them, however reluctantly, or going to the world below in a state of terror after failing to pay what you owe, whether sacrifices to a god or money to a man, then the possession of money contributes in no small measure to this end. That's admirably put, Cephalus, I said. But since you've brought up the subject of justice, can we say, quite simply, that it is truthfulness and returning anything you may have received from anyone else? Or is it sometimes right to behave in these ways and sometimes wrong? Let me give you an example. Suppose you borrowed some weapons from a friend when he was in his right mind.
Yo.
Suppose he later went mad and then asked for them back again. Everyone would agree, I imagine, that you shouldn't give them back to him, and that anyone who did give them back, or who was even prepared to be completely truthful to someone in this condition, would not be doing the right thing. Correct, he said. This is not the definition of justice, then, that it is telling the truth and returning what you have been given. Yes, it is, Socrates, Polymachus interrupted. At least, it is if we are to believe Simonides. I'd just like to say, Cephalus put in, that this is where I hand the discussion over to you. It's time I was doing something about the sacrifices. Well, am I not, Polymachus, your heir? You certainly are, he replied with a laugh, and went off to his sacrifices. Tell me then, I said, you who have inherited the argument, what does Simonides say about justice that you think is correct? That it is just to pay everyone what is owed to him. That's what he says, and I think he's right. Well, I said, Simonides is a wise and inspired man. It is certainly not easy to disagree with him. But what on earth does he mean by this remark? You may well know, Polymachus. I have no idea. He obviously doesn't mean what we were talking about just now. If one person gives something to another for safekeeping and then asks for it back when he's not in his right mind, Simonides doesn't mean that the other person should give it to him. And yet I imagine the thing which was given for safekeeping is owed to the person who gave it, isn't it? Yes. In that situation, when someone goes out of his mind and then asks for it back, isn't returning it completely out of the question? Yes, it is. That isn't what Simonides means, apparently, when he says that it is just to pay back what is owed or due. No, it certainly isn't, he said. What he thinks is due to friends is to do them good, not harm. I understand, I replied. If one person gives back to another money which the other has given him for safekeeping, he is not giving what is due if he is returning it and the others receiving it are harmful, and if the two of them are friends. Isn't that what you think Simonides means? Yes, it is. What about enemies? Should you give them whatever is in fact due to them? You certainly should, he said, and what is due between enemies is what is appropriate, something harmful. Simonides was speaking as a poet then, apparently, and disguising his definition of justice. What he meant, it seems, was that justice was giving any individual what was appropriate for him. But he called it what was owed. Yes, that must have been what he meant. Suppose, then, one of us had said to him, Simonides, take the art or skill which is called medicine. What does it give that is due and appropriate, and to what does it give it? What do you think his answer would have been? Obviously, he replied, he would have said it gives the body drugs and food and drink. And the art of cookery, what does it give that is due and appropriate, and to what does it give it? It gives flavour to cooked food. Very well. Then what about the art or skill which we would call justice? What does it give, and to what does it give it? Well, if we're to follow the previous definition, Socrates, it gives benefits and injuries to friends and enemies. Does he mean, then, that helping your friends and harming your enemies is justice? I think so. All right. When people are unwell, when it's a question of sickness and health, who is best at helping them if they are friends, and harming them if they are enemies? A doctor. And when they're at sea, who can best help or harm them amid the dangers of a sea voyage? A ship's captain. What about the just man? In what activity and for what purpose is he the one best able to treat his friends well and his enemies badly? In war and alliances, I think. Very well. Now, when people aren't ill, my dear Polemarchus, a doctor is no use to them. True. And when they're not at sea, a ship's captain is no use to them. No. Does that mean the just man is no use to them when they're not at war? No, I'm sure it doesn't. Justice is something useful, even in peacetime, then? Yes, it is. But then so is agriculture, isn't it? Yes, for producing crops. Yes, and shoemaking? Yes, that's useful. For producing shoes, you would say, presumably. Of course. What about justice, then? When you say it's useful in peacetime, what is it useful for? What does it produce? Contracts, Socrates. And by contracts, do you mean partnerships or something else? I mean partnerships. All right. Is the just man a good and useful partner when it comes to playing backgammon? Or would someone who plays backgammon be more use? Someone who plays backgammon would be more use. And when it comes to bricklaying or building in stone, is the just man a more useful and better partner than a builder? Of course not. Well, in what kind of partnership is the just man a better partner than a lyre player, in the way a lyre player is better at playing the notes? In partnerships involving money, I think. Unless by any chance, Polemarchus, it's a question of putting the money to some use, if you have to buy or sell a horse jointly for a sum of money. In that case, I imagine, someone who knows about horses is more use, isn't he? Apparently. And for buying or selling a ship, you'd want a shipbuilder or ship's captain. So it seems. In what situation, then, requiring the joint use of silver or gold, is the just man more useful than anyone else? When there's a need to deposit money and have it kept safe? You mean when there's no need to put it to any use? You just want it to stay where it is? That's right. So it's when money is useless that justice is useful for dealing with it. It looks like it. And a pruning knife. When you want to keep it safe, then justice is useful, both in public life and in private life. But when you want to use it, then the art of viticulture is what you want. Apparently. And are you going to say the same about a shield or a lyre? That justice is useful when you need to keep them safe and not use them, but that when you do need to use them, then you want the soldier's art and the art of music? I shall have to say that. And in all other examples, justice is useless when it comes to using any of them, and useful only when they are useless? I suppose so, he said. Though personally I can't any longer remember what I did say. But one thing I do think still, and that is that justice is treating your friends well and your enemies badly. By friends, do you mean the...
Let me listen to that again.
He said, though personally I can't any longer remember what I did say. But one thing I do think still, and that is that justice is treating your friends well and your enemies badly. By friends, do you mean the people each individual believes to be good, or those who really are good, even if he doesn't realize it? And the same with enemies. In all probability, he replied, people will like those they think are good and dislike those they think are evil. And do people ever make mistakes in this? Do they often think people are good when they're not, and vice versa? Yes, they do make mistakes. So for these people, are the good their enemies, and the bad their friends? They certainly are. Is it none the less right for these people, when this happens, to treat the wicked well and the good badly? It looks like it. And the good are just. They're not the kind of people who do wrong. True. So, according to your argument, it is right to harm those who do no wrong. Impossible, Socrates. It looks as if there's something wrong with the argument. Then it must be right, I said, to treat the unjust badly and the just well. That sounds better. In that case, Polemarchus, there are many people for whom it'll turn out, if their judgment of people has been at fault, that it is right to treat their friends badly, since their friends are evil, and their enemies well, since their enemies are good. In those circumstances, we shall end up saying the exact opposite of the definition we quoted from Simonides. Yes, he said, it certainly can turn out like that. Let's change our definition. We're probably not defining friend and enemy correctly. How are we defining them, Polemarchus? We said that the person who seemed to be good was a friend. And now, how do you want to change that definition? If someone both seems to be good and is, let's call him a friend. If he seems to be, but isn't really, let's say that he seems to be a friend, but isn't really a friend, and let the same definition apply to an enemy. On this definition, it appears the good man will be a friend, and the one who is no good will be an enemy. Yes. Do you want us to make an addition to our definition of justice? Our first definition was that it was just to help a friend and harm an enemy. Do you want us now to add to that and say that it is just to help a friend?
Thank you, Blaze Trulia, for the sub with the Prime. I appreciate you. Thank you.
If he is good, and harm an enemy if he is bad. Yes, he said, I think that would be an excellent definition. But is it really in the nature of a just man, I asked, to treat anyone in the world badly? It certainly is, he said. He should treat badly those who are wicked, his enemies. If you treat a horse badly, does it become better or worse? Worse. Worse by the standard we use to judge dogs, or the standard we use to judge horses? The standard we use to judge horses. And dogs the same. If you treat them badly, they become worse by the standard we use to judge dogs, not horses? They must do. What about humans, my friend? Are we to say in the same way that if they are treated badly, they become worse by the standard we use to judge human excellence? Certainly. But isn't justice a form of human excellence? Again, it must be. In which case, my friend, members of the human race who are treated badly must necessarily become more unjust. It looks like it. Are musicians able, by means of music, to make people unmusical? No, that's impossible. Can horsemen make people unskilled with horses by means of horsemanship? No. And can the just make people unjust by means of justice? Or, in general, can the good use human excellence to make people bad? No, that's impossible. Yes, because it's not the property of heat, I assume, to make things cold. It's the property of its opposite. Yes, nor is it the property of dryness to make things wet, but of its opposite. Yes, and it is certainly not the property of good to do harm or treat people badly, but of its opposite. Apparently. And the just man is good? Yes. In that case, Polemarchus, it is not the property of the just man to treat his friend or anyone else badly. It is the property of his opposite, the unjust man.
Yo.
Even in the middle of our conversation, Thrasymachus had repeatedly tried to take control of the discussion, but each time he had been prevented by those sitting round us, who wanted to hear the discussion through to the end. But when we reached this stopping place in the argument, he was incapable of remaining silent any longer. He gathered himself and sprang at us like a wild beast at its prey. Speaking up loud and clear, Thrasymachus said, "What's this nonsense that has got into you too, Socrates? Why be so obliging? Why keep giving way to one another? If you really want to know what justice is, then stop simply asking questions and scoring points by proving that any answer given by anyone else is wrong. You know perfectly well it's easier to ask questions than to give answers. Come on, why don't you give some answers yourself? Tell us what you say justice is, and don't go telling
Nah, the other route was better for sure.
or what's advantageous or what's profitable or what's good for you. I won't take any of that stuff. No, tell us please quite clearly exactly what you mean." "Don't be angry with us, Thrasymachus," I said with some apprehension. "If Polemarchus and I are making mistakes in our examination of the arguments, I assure you we're not making them on purpose. If we're looking for gold, we wouldn't deliberately give way to one another in our search and so destroy our chances of finding it. So, since what we are actually looking for is justice, a thing more valuable than a large quantity of gold, you can't imagine we are so stupid as to make concessions to one another and not be determined to bring it as clearly as possible into view. Believe us, my friend. The trouble is, we lack the ability. So when you clever people see our efforts, pity is really a far more appropriate reaction than annoyance." This brought an unpleasant laugh from Thrasymachus. "Oh, my God," he said, "I knew it, the famous modesty of Socrates. I predicted it. I told these people you'd refuse to give any answers, that you'd pretend to be modest, that you'd do anything to avoid answering if anyone asked you a question." "Clever of you, Thrasymachus. Clever enough to know what would happen if you were to ask someone what 12 was, but then give him a warning before he answered, 'Now look here, don't go telling us that 12 is twice 6, or 3 times 4, or 6 times 2, or 4 times 3. I'm not going to take any nonsense of that sort from you.' It was obvious to you, I imagine, that if you asked the question in that way, no one could possibly answer it." "Is that just what you're going to do now? Are you going to give one of the answers I told you not to give?" "It wouldn't surprise me," I said, "if on reflection I came to that conclusion." "What if I give you an answer about justice which is quite different from all those other answers, a much better answer than those? What do you think should be your penalty?" "Well, obviously, the penalty appropriate to someone who doesn't know. He should learn, I take it, from the person who does know." "You innocent," said Thrasymachus. "No, you must do more than learn. You must pay me some money as well." "Very well. As soon as I have any, I will." "You do have some," said Glaucon. "If it's money you're worried about, Thrasymachus, go ahead and speak. We will all pay up for Socrates." "I'll bet you will," he said. "Anything to allow Socrates to play his usual trick, not answer the question himself, but wait for someone else to answer it, and then take what he says and try to prove it wrong." "Really, my dear fellow," I said, "how could anyone answer the question if, for a start, he didn't know the answer, didn't so much as claim to know it? And on top of that, even supposing he did have some idea on the subject, if he'd been told by a man of some authority not to say any of the things he thought? No, it makes much more sense for you to speak. You're the one who claims to know the answer and have something to say, so please, as a favour to me, don't keep your answer to yourself. Give Glaucon here and the others the benefit of your knowledge." "Hear it, then," he said. "I say that justice is simply what is good for the stronger." "Well, where's all that praise? You're not going to give it, are you?" "Yes, I will, as soon as I understand what you mean. At the moment, I still don't know. What is good for the stronger, you say, is just. What do you mean by that, Thrasymachus? If Polydamas, the all-in wrestler, is stronger than us, and eating beef is good for building his body, you presumably don't mean that this food is also good and right for us, who are weaker than him. Socrates, you're beneath contempt. You're taking what I said in the way which makes it easiest to misrepresent my meaning." "Not at all, my friend, but you'll have to tell me more clearly what you mean." "All right," he said. "You must be aware that some cities are tyrannies, some are democracies, and others aristocracies." "Of course." "And what is in control in each city is the ruling power." "Yes." "Every ruling power makes laws for its own good. A democracy makes democratic laws, a tyranny tyrannical laws, and so on. In making these laws, they make it clear that what is good for them, the rulers, is what is just for their subjects. If anyone disobeys, they punish him for breaking the law and acting unjustly. That's what I mean, my friend, when I say that in all cities the same thing is just, namely, what is good for the ruling authority. This, I take it, is where the power lies, and the result is, for anyone who looks at it in the right way, that the same thing is just everywhere, what is good for the stronger." "Now I understand what you mean," I said, "though whether or not it is true remains to be seen. So even your answer, Thrasymachus, is that what is good for a person is just, though that was an answer you told me firmly not to give. But you add the qualification, for the stronger. A trivial addition, you may say. That's not yet clear. It may well be an important one. What is clear is that we must examine whether what you say is true. Like you, I agree that justice is something that is good for a person, but while you qualify it as what is good for the stronger, I'm not so sure. We should examine the question." "Go on, then. Examine it." "I shall," I said. "Tell me, don't you also say that it is right for subjects to obey their rulers?" "I do." "And are they infallible, the rulers in all these cities? Or are they capable of making mistakes?" "Well, they are certainly, I imagine, capable of making mistakes." "So, when they set about enacting laws, do they enact some correctly, but a certain number incorrectly?" "In my opinion, yes." "And correctly is enacting laws which are in their own interest, and incorrectly is enacting laws which are against their own interest. Is that what you mean?" "Yes." "But whatever they enact, their subjects must carry it out, and this is justice." "Of course. In that case, according to your definition, it is not only just to do what is good for the stronger, but also its opposite, what is not good for him." "What do you mean?" he said. "I mean what you mean, I think. Let's look at it more closely. Haven't we agreed that the rulers, in giving orders to their subjects to do anything, sometimes make mistakes about what is in their own best interest, but that it is just for the subjects to carry out whatever orders their rulers give them? Isn't that what we have agreed?" Yes, he said, I accept that. Then you must also accept, I said, that we have agreed it is just to do things which are not good for the rulers and the stronger, when the rulers inadvertently issue orders which are harmful to themselves, and you say it is just for their subjects to carry out the orders of their rulers. In that situation, most wise Thrasymachus, isn't the inevitable result that it is just to do the exact opposite of what you say? After all, the weaker have been ordered to do what is not good for the stronger. Indeed they have, Socrates, said Polemarchus. No question about it. No question at all, Cleitophon interrupted, if you're acting as a witness for Socrates. Who needs a witness? Said Polemarchus. Thrasymachus himself agrees that rulers sometimes issue orders which are bad for themselves, but that it is right for their subjects to carry out these orders. Yes, Polemarchus, because carrying out orders issued by rulers was what Thrasymachus defined as just. Yes, Cleitophon, but in his definition he also said that what was good for the stronger was just. He gave both those definitions, and then went on to agree that those who are stronger sometimes tell those who are weaker, their subjects, to do what is bad for them, the stronger. It follows from these admissions that what is good for those who are stronger would be no more just than what is not good for them. When he talked about what was good for the stronger, said Cleitophon, he meant what the stronger thought was good for him. This is what the weaker must do, and that was his definition of justice. Those weren't the words he used, said Polemarchus. It's neither here nor there, Polemarchus, I said. If those are the words Thrasymachus is using now, let's take it in that sense. Tell me, Thrasymachus, was that how you wanted to define justice, as what the stronger thinks is good for him, whether it really is good or not? Is that what we should take you to be saying? Certainly not, he said. Do you imagine I regard a person who makes a mistake at the moment when he is making the mistake as stronger? That's certainly what I thought you meant when you agreed that rulers are not infallible, that they sometimes make mistakes. You're always trying to trick people, Socrates, in the way you argue. I mean, if someone makes a mistake in treating the sick, do you call him a doctor by virtue of the actual mistake? Or an accountant who makes a mistake at the precise moment when he is making his mistake by virtue of this mistake? No, I think that's just the form of words we use. We say, the doctor made a mistake, the accountant made a mistake, the teacher made a mistake. But the reality, I think, is that none of them, to the extent that he is what we call him, ever makes a mistake. In precise language, since you like speaking precisely, no one who exercises a skill ever makes a mistake. So the ruler, to the extent that he is a ruler, does not make mistakes, and since he does not make mistakes, he does enact what is best for him, and this is what his subject must carry out. So, as I said originally, my definition is that it is just to do what is good for the stronger. Very well, Thrasymachus, I said. So you think I'm a trickster, do you? I certainly do. You think I've been asking the questions I have been asking with the deliberate intention of winning the argument unfairly. I'm quite sure of it. It won't do you any good, though. You can't use unfair arguments without my noticing, and once I notice what you're up to, you don't have the resources to defeat me in open argument. As if I'd even dream of trying. But since we don't want this situation to arise again, could you make one thing clear? When you say it is right for the weaker to do what is good for the stronger, do you mean the ruler and the stronger in normal usage, or in the precise sense you were talking about just now? I mean the ruler in the most precise sense possible. Tell me then, you were talking just now about the doctor in the precise sense. Is he a businessman or a healer of the sick? And make sure it's the true doctor you're talking about. He's a healer of the sick. What about a ship's captain? Is a ship's captain, in the correct sense, a master of sailors or a sailor? A master of sailors. It's not an objection, I take it, that he sails in the ship. Nor is he for that reason to be called a sailor, since the title ship's captain does not depend on his sailing, but on his art or skill, and his authority over the sailors. True, he said. And for each of these, is there something which is good for him? Yes. Doesn't the art or skill come into existence for just this reason, to seek out and provide what is good for each person? Yes, it does. For each of these skills, then, is there anything else which is good for it, apart from being as perfect as possible? I don't understand your question. Suppose you asked me if it was enough for the body to be the body, or whether it needed something else. I would reply, it certainly does need something else. That's the reason why the art of medicine has come to be invented, because the body is defective and therefore not self-sufficient. So the art of medicine was developed to provide it with the things which were good for it. Do you think I'd be right in giving that answer, or not? Yes, I think you'd be right. What about medicine itself? Is that defective? Does any art or skill, for that matter, stand in need of some virtue or excellence, in the way that eyes need sight and ears need hearing, and sight and hearing require an art or skill to preside over them, an art or skill which will think about and provide what is good for them? Is there any defect in the actual art or skill itself? Isn't the art or skill itself, in the precise sense, without fault or blemish, if it is correct, so long as it is entirely what it is? And when you answer, use words in the precise sense you were talking about. Is it as I have described, or not? It is as you have described, he said, apparently. In that case, I said, the art of medicine does not think about what is good for the art of medicine, but what is good for the body. Yes. And horsemanship does not think about what is good for horsemanship, but what is good for horses.
I wasn't supposed to click off that.
About what is good for itself, it has no need to. No, it thinks about what is good for the thing of which it is the art or skill. Apparently. But surely, Thrasymachus, arts and skills control and have power over the objects of which they are the arts and skills. He conceded this, though with great reluctance. In which case, there's no branch or knowledge which thinks about or prescribes what is good for the stronger, but only what is good for the weaker, for what is under its control. He agreed to this too, in the end, though he tried to resist it. And when he did agree, I continued, isn't it a fact that no doctor, to the extent that he is a doctor, thinks about or prescribes what is good for the doctor? No. He thinks about what is good for the patient. After all, it was agreed that a doctor, in the precise sense, is responsible for bodies. He's not a businessman. Isn't that what was agreed? Thrasymachus assented. And that the ship's captain, in the precise sense, was in command of sailors, not a sailor. Yes, that was agreed. So a ship's captain or commander of this type will not think about or prescribe what is good for the ship's captain, but what is good for the sailor, for the person under his command. He agreed, though reluctantly. And so, Thrasymachus, I said, no one in any position of authority, to the extent that he is in authority, thinks about or prescribes what is good for himself, but only what is good for the person or thing under his authority, for whose benefit he himself exercises his art or skill. Everything he says and everything he does is said or done with this person or thing in mind, with a view to what is good and appropriate for the person or thing under his With these words, I thought I had finished what I had to say, but I was wrong. Apparently, it was only an introduction. Glaucon is an extremely determined character in everything he does, and on this occasion he refused to accept Thrasymachus' surrender. "Socrates," he said, "do you really want to convince us that it is in every way better to be just than unjust? Or is it enough merely to seem to have convinced us?" "I would prefer," I said, "really to convince you, if I had a choice." "In that case," he said, "you are not achieving your aim. Tell me this. Do you think there is a good of the kind we would choose to have because we value it for its own sake, and not from any desire for its results? Enjoyment, for example, and pleasures which are harmless and produce no consequences for the future beyond enjoyment for the person who possesses them." "Yes," I said, "I do think there is a good of this kind." "What about the sort we value both for itself and for its consequences? Things like intelligence and sight and health. We value goods of this sort, I imagine, for both reasons." "Yes," I said. "And can you distinguish a third class or category of good?" he asked. "A class which contains physical exercise, undergoing medical treatment when we are ill, practicing medicine, and earning a living in general. These we would describe as unpleasant but beneficial. We would not choose to have them for their own sakes, but only for the payment or other benefits which result from them." "Yes," I said, "there is this third class as well. What of it?" "In which of these classes," he asked, "do you put justice?" "In my opinion," I replied, "it is in the best class, the class which is to be valued by anyone who wants to be happy, both for itself and for its consequences." "That's not what most people think," he said. "Most people would put it in the unpleasant class, which we should cultivate in return for payment and reputation on account of public opinion, but which purely for itself is to be avoided like the plague." "I know that's what they think," I said. "Thrasymachus criticized it and praised injustice on those grounds some while back. But I'm a slow learner, apparently." "Well," he said, "listen to me as well, and see if you agree with what I suggest. I think Thrasymachus too readily allowed himself to be bewitched by you, like a snake being charmed by a snake charmer. As far as I'm concerned, the proof is not yet convincing, either for justice or injustice. I want to be told what each of them is, and what effect it has just by itself, when it is present in the soul. I want to forget about the rewards and results it brings. So here's what I'm going to do, if you've no objection. I'm going to revive Thrasymachus's definition. First, I shall say what kind of thing people reckon justice is, and how they think it arises. Secondly, I shall claim that all those who practice it do so as something unavoidable, against their will, and not because they regard it as a good. Thirdly, I shall say that this is a rational way for them to behave, since the unjust man, in their view, has a much better life than the just man. These are not my own opinions, Socrates, but I'm going to make the most powerful speech I can in defense of the unjust life, and I want to hear you, in your turn, criticizing injustice and defending justice. There you are. See if you approve of my suggestion." "I'd like nothing better," I replied. "That's good," he said. "Now, listen to the first thing I said I was going to talk about. What sort of thing justice is, and how it arises. Doing wrong, men say, is by its nature a good, and being wronged an evil. But the evil of being wronged outweighs the good of doing wrong. As a result, when people wrong one another and are wronged by one another and get a taste of both, those who are unable to avoid the one and achieve the other think it'll pay them to come to an agreement with one another not to do wrong and not to be wronged. That's how they come to start making laws and agreements with one another and calling lawful and just that which is laid down by the law. They say that justice is a compromise between the best case, which is doing wrong and getting away with it, and the worst case, which is being wronged and being unable to retaliate. The easiest way to see that it is true is to imagine something like this. Suppose we gave each of them the just and the unjust the freedom to do whatever he liked. Suppose they had the kind of power they say the ancestor of Gyges the Lydian once had. They say he was a shepherd, and that he was a serf of the man who was at that time the ruler of Lydia. One day there was a great rainstorm and an earthquake in the place where he grazed his sheep. Part of the ground opened up, and a great hole appeared in it. He was astonished when he saw it, but went down into it. And the legend has it that among many marvels he saw a hollow horse made of bronze, with windows in it. Peeping through them, he saw inside what appeared to be a corpse, larger than human, wearing nothing but a golden ring on its hand. They say he removed the ring and came out. The shepherds were having one of their regular meetings so that they could give the king their monthly report on the flocks, and the man turned up as well, wearing the ring. As he sat with the rest of them, he happened to twist the setting of the ring towards him into the palm of his hand. When he did this, he became invisible to those who were sitting with him, and they started talking about him as if he'd gone. He was amazed and twisted the ring again, turning the setting to the outside. As soon as he did so, he became visible. When he realized this, he started experimenting with the ring to see if it did have this power, and he found that that was how it was. When he turned the setting to the inside, he became invisible. When he turned it to the outside, he became visible. Once he had established this, he lost no time arranging to be one of those making the report to the king. When he got there, he seduced the king's wife, plotted with her against...
Hey, yo, hold on. Gotta re-listen to that. That's fire.
Became invisible. When he turned it to the outside, he became visible. Once he had established this, he lost no time arranging to be one of those making the report to the king. When he got there, he seduced the king's wife, plotted with her against the king, killed him, and seized power. Imagine there were two rings like that, and the just man wore one, while the unjust man wore the other. People think that no one would be sufficiently iron-willed to remain within the bounds of justice. No one could bring himself to keep his hands off other people's possessions and steer clear of them if he was free to take whatever he liked without a second thought, in the marketplace or go into people's houses and sleep with anyone he liked, or if he could kill or release from prison anyone he chose, and in general go round acting like a god among men. This is a strong argument, you might say, for the claim that no one is just voluntarily, but only under compulsion. Justice is not thought to be a good thing for individuals, since wherever anyone thinks he can do wrong, he does do wrong. Every man believes injustice to be much more profitable for the individual than justice, and he will be right to think this, according to the person putting forward this view. Anyone who came into possession of the kind of freedom I have described, and then refused ever to do anything wrong, and did not lay a finger on other people's possessions, would be regarded by observers as the most pathetic and brainless of creatures, though, of course, in public they would praise him, lying to one another because of their fear of being wronged. That's all I have to say about that claim. As for the choice between the lives of the people in question, the only way we can make it properly is by contrasting the completely just man with the completely unjust man. How shall we contrast them? Like this. We will subtract nothing either from the injustice of the unjust man or from the justice of the just man. Let's assume, if the unjust man is going to be really unjust, that he goes about his wrongdoings in the right way and gets away with it. The one who gets caught is to be regarded as incompetent, since perfect injustice consists in appearing to be just when you are not. We must credit the completely unjust man, then, with the most complete injustice. To the person who commits the greatest wrongs, we must not deny, in fact we must grant, the enjoyment of the greatest reputation for justice. That is our model of the unjust man. Beside him, let us put our imaginary just man, a simple and honourable man who wants, in Aeschylus's words, not to appear to be good, but to be good. We must deprive him of the appearance, since if he appears to be just, the appearance of justice will bring him recognition and rewards, and then it will not be clear whether his motive for being just was a desire for justice or a desire for the rewards and the recognition. So we must strip him of everything but justice. We must put him in a situation which is the opposite of our previous example. despite doing nothing wrong, he must have the worst possible reputation for injustice. Let him live out his life like this, without any change until the day of his death, appearing to be unjust, though actually being just. And if both their situations are as I have described, it shouldn't be beyond us, I imagine, to give a full account of the kind of life which awaits each of them. So, that is what I must do now. What Aeschylus said turns out to be a much more accurate description of the unjust man, who wants not to appear to be unjust, but to be unjust. In the first place, they will say, he can be a ruler in his city because of his reputation for justice. Secondly, he can marry where he likes, give his daughters in marriage to whom he chooses, and make contracts and partnerships with anyone he wishes. Besides all this, he finds it easy to make himself a rich man, since he has no compunction about acting unjustly. That is why, they say, he is successful in political and legal disputes, both public and private, and why he gets the better of his enemies. By getting the better of them, he grows rich and can help his friends and harm his enemies. He can make full and generous sacrifices and offerings to the gods, and is much better able than the just man to serve the gods and that part of mankind whom he chooses to serve. As a result, they claim, he is in all probability more likely than the just man to be the god's favourite. Well, I said, that was certainly an inspired performance. To be able to speak like that in favour of injustice, without being convinced it is a better thing than justice, and I believe you when you say you are really not convinced, though from what you actually said I wouldn't have believed you. The trouble is, the more firmly I believe you, the less certain I am what to do next. I can't defend justice. I don't think I have the ability. I say that because you have rejected the arguments by which I thought I had proved to Thrasymachus that justice was something better than injustice. On the other hand, I can't not defend her, since I can't help feeling it is wrong to stand idly by when I hear justice coming under attack, and not come to her defence for as long as I have breath in my body and a tongue in my head. Well, Glaucon and the rest of them insisted that they wanted me to make a defence and not abandon the argument. So I adopted what seemed to me the best approach. The inquiry we are undertaking is not a simple matter. If you ask me, it requires sharp eyesight, and since we are not clever people, I think we should conduct our search in the same sort of way as we would if our eyesight were not very good, and we were told to read some small writing from a bit of a distance away. And then one of us realized that a larger copy of the same writing, apparently, was to be found somewhere else, on some larger surface. We would regard it as a stroke of luck, I think, to be able to read the large letters first, and then turn our attention to the small ones, to see if they really did say the same thing. We certainly would, said Adeimantus, but where can you see anything like that in our search for justice? I'll tell you, I said. We say that there is justice in an individual, but also, I take it, justice in a whole city? Yes? And a city is something bigger than an individual? Yes, it is. In that case, maybe justice will be on a larger scale in what is larger and easier to find out about. So, if you approve, why don't we start by finding out what sort of thing it is in cities? After that, we can make a similar inquiry into the individual, trying to find the likeness of the larger version in the form the smaller takes. I think that's a good idea, he said. Suppose then, I said, we were to study the theoretical origin of a city. Would we also see the origin in it of justice and injustice? We might, he said. And if we do that, is there a chance that what we are looking for will be easier to find? Yes, much easier. You think, then, that this is a task we should attempt to complete? I suspect it is a fairly major undertaking, so you decide. We have decided, said Adeimantus. Go ahead. Very well, I said. The origin
Could have done that a little bit differently. Kept that a secret.
of a city lies, I think, in the fact that we are not,
Let's keep
any
going
of
now.
us, self-sufficient. We have all sorts of needs. Can you think of any other reason for the foundation of a city? No, I can't. In this way, then, different individuals may form associations with one person to meet one need, and with another person to meet a different need. With this variety of wants, they may collect a number of partners and allies into one place of habitation, and to this joint habitation we give the name city, don't we? Yes, we do. Does one person share with another when he does share, or does he accept a share, because he thinks it is better for him personally? Yes, he does. Right then, I said. Let's construct a hypothetical city from the beginning. It is the product, apparently, of our needs. Of course. And the first and most important of those needs, if we are to exist and stay alive, is the provision of food. Unquestionably. Second comes the need for housing, and third, the need for clothing and things like that. That is right. Well then, I said, how will our city be equal to meeting these requirements? Won't it just be one farmer, plus a builder, plus a weaver? Or should we add a shoemaker as well, and anyone else who provides for physical needs? Yes, we should. So the most basic city would have to consist of 4 or 5 men. It looks like it. Well then, will a single individual do better exercising a number of skills, or will each do best concentrating on one? Concentrating on one, he replied. And another thing. It is clear, I think, that if you let the right moment for a task pass by, the task suffers. Yes, that is clear. That is because the task in hand will not wait for the person doing it to have a spare moment. So it is essential that whoever is doing it should concentrate on it and not regard it as a hobby. Yes, it is essential. It follows from this that in any enterprise more is produced, and that it is better and more easily produced, when one person does a single task which is suited to his nature, and does it at the right time, keeping himself free from other tasks. It certainly does. Then it will take more than 4 citizens, Adamantus, to provide for the needs we were talking about. The farmer, it appears, will not make himself a plough with his own hands, not if it's going to be a good plough, nor a hoe, nor any of his other farming implements. No more will the builder, who also needs a number of tools, and the same goes for the weaver and the shoemaker. True. So, carpenters and bronzesmiths and a whole lot of skilled workers of that kind will become partners in our little city and make the place quite crowded. They will. All the same, it still won't be all that large, even if we add cattlemen, shepherds and other herdsmen, so that the farmers can have oxen for ploughing, and so that builders as well as the farmers will be able to use animals for carrying materials, and so that weavers and shoemakers can have hides and wool. It certainly won't be a small city, he said, if it contains all that. That's not all, I said. It will be more or less impossible to locate the city itself in a place where it won't need imports. Quite impossible. So it will require yet more people in addition to bring it the things it needs from some other city. It will. What is more, if their agent goes empty-handed, taking nothing which meets the needs of the people from whom they are importing the things they are short of, then he will come back empty-handed, won't he? I think so. So, in their own economy, the citizens must not only provide adequately for themselves, they must also produce the right kind of goods, and in large enough quantities, for the people they need to trade with. Yes, they must. So, our city needs more farmers and more workers in other occupations. Yes, And more agents as well, presumably. The ones who are going to do all the importing and exporting. These people are merchants, aren't they? Yes. So we shall need merchants as well. Definitely. And if our trade is by sea, we shall need a large number of other people as well. Experts on seafaring. Yes, a large number. What about trade in the city itself? How will each group share its production with others? That, after all, was our reason for forming an association and establishing a city. Well, obviously, he said, by buying and selling. That will give rise to a marketplace and a currency, a unit of exchange for transactions. Undoubtedly. But when the farmer or member of one of the other occupations brings to market part of what he produces, he may not arrive there at the same moment as those who need to exchange goods with him. Is he going to sit around in the marketplace, taking time off from his work?
This is a weird spot, because if you go for trap, you don't have 2 spells. So you miss out on this and that. So you have the same amount of interruptions either way. Probably just play it safe.
Certainly not, he said. There are people who identify this need and make themselves available for this activity. In a well-run city, they tend to be the weakest physically, those who are useless for any other kind of work. They have to wait around there in the marketplace, receiving goods in exchange for money from those who have something to sell, and then again money in return for goods from all those who want to buy. So, this is the need, I said, which brings dealers into our city. Don't we call people dealers if they sit in the marketplace offering a selling and buying service, whereas those who travel round the cities we call merchants? We do. And there is still another group of people, I think, offering a service. We certainly would not want them as partners or associates for their mental attributes, but they possess physical strength suitable for manual labour. This they offer for sale, and the price they put on it they call their hire. That, I imagine, is why they in turn are called hired labourers. Isn't that right? Yes. So, hired labourers, it seems, will also go to fill up our city. I think they may. Well then, Adamantus, is our city now large enough? Is it complete? Maybe it is. In which case, where exactly are justice and injustice to be found in it? In which of the elements we have examined have they made their appearance? Speaking for myself, Socrates, he said, I've no idea, unless I suppose it is in some sort of need which those elements have of one another. I think that may be the right answer, I said. We must examine it without hesitation. Let's look first at the way people will spend their time in an economy of this kind. Won't it be that they produce bread and wine and clothing and shoes? They will build themselves houses. In summer they will go about their work lightly clad and barefoot, and in winter they will be properly clothed and shod. They will live on barley meal and wheat flour, kneading and baking these. They will have fine barley cakes or wheat loaves served on reeds or fresh leaves. They will eat lying on straw beds covered with bryony and myrtle. They can live very well.
I don't think he was trying to say doesn't want to associate with pores necessarily. But I'd have to re-listen. I haven't been listening the closest.
Like this, they and their children, drinking wine after their meals, wearing garlands on their heads, and singing the praises of the gods, they will live quite happily with one another. They will have no more children than they can afford, and they will avoid poverty and war. At this point, Glaucon interrupted. No art of cookery, apparently, for these people you describe as living so well? That's a good point, I said. I forgot that they will have the art of cookery. Obviously, they will use salt and olives and cheese, and they will boil the usual country dishes of wild roots and vegetables. And for dessert, we can offer them figs and chickpeas and beans. and they will roast myrtle berries and acorns in front of the fire with a modest amount to drink. In this way, living lives which are peaceful and in all probability healthy, they will die in old age, handing down the same way of life to their descendants. If you were organising a city of pigs, Socrates, isn't that just how you would feed them? Well, what sort of meals should we give them, Glaucon? I asked. The kind we're used to. If they're going to eat in comfort, they should lie on couches, eat off tables, and have the cooked dishes and desserts which people today have. I see, I replied. So we're not just looking at the origin of a city, apparently. We're looking at the origin of a luxurious city. Maybe that's not such a bad idea. If we look at that sort of city, we may perhaps see the point where justice and injustice come into existence in cities. I think the true city, the healthy version, as it were, is the one we have just described. But let's look also at the swollen and inflamed city, if that is what you prefer. We can easily do that. What's to stop us? All this, and this way of life, will not, it seems, be enough for some people. They will have couches and tables and other furniture in addition, and cooked dishes, of course, and incense, perfumes, call girls, cakes, every variety of all these things. As for those needs we talked about at the beginning, we can no longer prescribe only the bare necessities, housing, clothing, and shoes. We must introduce painting and decoration, and start using gold and ivory and all those sorts of things, mustn't we? Yes. So, once again, we must enlarge our city, since our first healthy city is no longer big enough. We must fill it with a great mass and multitude of things which are no longer what cities must have as a matter of necessity. For example, we must have hunters of all kinds, artists, all those using figure and colour for their imitations, and those using music, poets and their assistants, reciters, actors, dancers, producers, and the makers of all sorts of goods, especially those used for making women look beautiful. What's more, we shall need more people in service. Don't you think we shall need attendants for our sons, wet nurses, nannies, hairdressers, barbers, not to mention...
Actually, we might just hold Ash for queen. Yeah. I've been Ash in the wrong spot for sure.
Cooks and chefs.
Okay.
And besides those, we shall need people to keep pigs as
that
well.
One won't count. I didn't
we
know
didn't have them in our earlier city, since there was no need for them, but in this city there will be a need for them, as also for all sorts of other livestock, in case anyone wants them to eat. Isn't that right? Of course. And living like this, will we have much greater need of doctors than we did before? Yes, much greater. What is more, I imagine the territory, which was originally adequate to feed the original population, will no longer be adequate. It will be too small. Do we accept that? Yes. Do we need, then, to carve ourselves a slice of our neighbour's territory if we are going to have enough for pasturage and ploughing? And do they in turn need a slice of our land if they too give themselves up to the pursuit of unlimited wealth, not confining themselves to necessities? They're bound to, Socrates. And will the next step be war, Glaucon? Or what? War. Let us say nothing for the moment, I said, about whether the effect of war is harmful or beneficial. Let us merely note that we have discovered in its turn the origin of war.
2 seconds.
War arises out of those things which are the commonest causes of evil in cities, when evil does arise, both in private life and public life. Yes, our city needs to be even bigger, my friend, and not just a bit bigger. We must add to it a whole army which can go out and fight against invaders and defend all our wealth and the other things we were talking about just now. What about the citizens themselves? Aren't there enough of them? No, I said, not if we were right, you and the rest of us, in what we agreed earlier when we were forming our city. Surely we agreed, if you remember, that no individual was capable of practicing several arts or skills properly. True. Well, how about fighting in battle, I asked. Don't you think that is essentially an art or skill? Very much so, he said. And should we regard the art of shoemaking as more important than the art of war? No? Well then, we didn't allow our shoemaker to try and be a farmer as well, or a weaver or builder. He had to be a shoemaker to make sure the business of shoemaking was carried out properly. In the same way, we assigned a single task to each member of the other occupations, the task he was naturally suited to and for which he would keep himself free from other tasks, working at it throughout his life and taking every opportunity to produce good results. Isn't it of the highest importance that warfare should be carried on as efficiently as possible? Or is war so easy that any farmer, any shoemaker, or any practitioner of any art or skill can be a soldier as well? Even to be a decent draughts or dice player, you have to have been playing since you were a child. It can't be done in your spare time. So how can you pick up a shield or any other weapon or instrument of war and immediately be equipped to take your place in the battle line or in any of the other sorts of fighting which occur in time of war? Think of other instruments. There isn't one of them that will turn a person into a craftsman or athlete simply by being picked up, or that will be of any use to him if he has no expertise or has not had enough practice in handling it. No, he said. There'd be extremely valuable instruments if you could. Since the guardian's job, then, I said, is the most important, it must correspondingly call for the greatest freedom from other activities, together with the highest level of expertise and training. That's certainly my opinion, he said. And also, of course, a natural disposition suited to precisely this way of life? Of course. And it would be our job, apparently, if we are capable of it, to choose which dispositions and which kinds of dispositions were suited to the defence of the city. That would indeed be our job. Heavens, I said, that's a major responsibility we have taken upon ourselves. All the same, as far as our abilities permit, we must try not to back out of it. Yes, we must. Well then, I said, when it comes to acting as a guardian, don't you think that in his disposition a young man of good birth is like a young pedigree hound? In what way? Well, for example, each of them needs acute senses, speed in pursuit of what they detect, and strength as well, in case they catch it and have to fight with it. Yes, he said, they need all these
You might just ask this to stop a high level from coming out.
qualities. Plus courage, of course, if he is to fight well. Of course. But is any living creature likely to be brave, whether horse or dog or anything else, if it doesn't have a spirited and energetic nature? Haven't you noticed what an irresistible and unconquerable thing spirit is? With spirit, any living creature is fearless and invincible in the face of any danger. Yes, I have noticed that. As for the physical characteristics required of a guardian, then, they are obvious. Yes, and the mental requirement is that he should be spirited or energetic. Yes, that too. And do you think the person who is going to be guardian material needs another quality as well? Do you want him, as well as being spirited and energetic, to be also, by temperament, a lover of wisdom, a philosopher? What do you mean? I don't understand. It's another thing you see in dogs, I replied, something which makes you wonder at the animal. What is that? When it sees someone it doesn't know, a dog turns nasty, even though it hasn't been badly treated by him in the past. When it sees someone familiar, it welcomes him, even if it has never been at all well treated by him. Haven't you ever found that rather remarkable? I'd never really thought about it up to now, he said, but I think there's no doubt a dog does behave like that. It seems clever, this side of his nature. It seems to show a true love of wisdom. In what way? Because, I replied, it classifies what it sees as friendly or hostile solely on the fact that it knows one and doesn't know the other. It must be a lover of knowledge, if it defines friend and enemy by means of knowledge.
What is this ash? I don't know how you would ash if they start like this.
And ignorance. Yes, he said, it must. And are love of knowledge and love of wisdom, or philosophy, the same thing? They are. So can we say with some confidence of a man, too, that if he's going to be someone who is gentle towards those he knows and recognizes, he must, by his nature, be a lover of knowledge and of wisdom? We can. Then will the person who is going to be a good and true guardian of our city be a lover of wisdom, spirited, swift, and strong? He certainly will. Very well then, I said. What is the next question we have to decide? Isn't it which of these people are to rule, and which be ruled? Unquestionably. Is it obvious the rulers should be older, and those who are ruled younger? Yes, it is. And that the rulers should be the best among them? That too. Among farmers, aren't the best ones the ones who most possess the attributes of a farmer? Yes. So in this context, since we are looking for the best of the guardians, must they not be the ones who most possess the attributes of a guardian of the city? Yes. And for this purpose do they have to be wise, powerful, and above all devoted to the city? They do. And people are most devoted to whatever it is they love. Bound to be. And they love most what they believe to have the same interests as themselves, the thing whose success or failure they think results in their own success or failure. True, he said. Then we must select from the guardians the kind of men who on examination strike us most strongly their whole lives through as being utterly determined to do what is in the city's interests, and as refusing to act in any way against its interests. Yes, they should be the people we want. I think we should observe them at all ages to make sure they are the guardians and defenders of this belief, and that neither magic nor force can make them forget and jettison their conviction that they should do what is best for the city. What do you mean by this jettisoning? He asked. I'll tell you, he said. I think our minds can lose a belief either with or without our consent. With our consent, when it's a false belief and we learn better, without our consent in the case of all true belief. I understand the loss which is with our consent, but the loss which is without our consent I need to have explained to me. Really? Don't you agree with me that what is good can be taken away from people only without their consent, whereas what is bad is taken away with their consent? Isn't being deceived about the truth something bad, and knowing the truth something good? And don't you think that having a belief which agrees with the way things are is knowing the truth? You're right. When people lose a true belief, it is without their consent. And is that a question of theft, or magic, or force? Once again, I'm afraid I don't see what you mean. I seem to be making myself about as clear as a tragic poet, I said. By theft, I mean people who are talked into changing their minds, and people who forget. Either the passage of time or some process of argument takes away their belief without them realizing it. You do see what I mean now, I hope. Yes. By force, I mean those whom pain or grief causes to change their beliefs. Yes, I understand that as well, he said, and I agree. As for magic, you would also accept, I imagine, that there are people whose beliefs change because they are seduced by pleasure, or because there is something they are afraid of. Yes, all the things which deceive us do look like a form of magic. So, as I said just now, we must look for those who are the best defenders of their conviction that in any situation they must do what they think is in the city's best interests for them to do. From their earliest childhood we must watch them and set them the kind of tasks which can make them lose sight of this aim and lead them astray. Then we must choose the ones who remember their aim and are not easily led astray. Those who are led astray we must reject, mustn't we? Yes. As a second type of test, we must give them hardship, pain, and trials, and in all of them look for the characteristics we want. Correct, he said. Then we must have a third type of test, a test for magic, and watch their reactions to that. Just like people taking young colts close to loud and confused noises, to find out if they are easily frightened, we must expose our guardians, when they are young, first to danger and then to pleasure. We must test them like gold in the fire, only more so. Does this one stand out in every situation as immune to magic and worthy of respect? Is he a good guardian of himself and the musical education he has received? Does he show qualities of rhythm and harmony in all the tests we set him? Is he the kind of person who would be the greatest use to himself and the city? From our children, from our young and grown men, the one who under constant testing emerges as pure is the one who should be appointed as a ruler and guardian.
I forgot I was playing through Ash. I messed that up. I wasn't even thinking about Ash. I was literally just comboing. Alright, this one won't count.
Of our city. We should heap honours on him in life and in death, and when it comes to burial and other memorials, he should receive the greatest tributes. The one who fails the tests, we should reject. Well, Glaucon, so much for my views on the selection and appointment of the rulers and guardians. It's only a general outline, of course, and not a precise specification. I think my views are pretty much the same as yours, he said. In that case, aren't these really the people who can most accurately be called full guardians, making sure friends within do not want to harm it, and enemies without are not able to harm it? The young people whom we have been calling guardians up to now we can call auxiliaries, the defenders of the ruler's beliefs. I agree. In that case, I said, how can we contrive to use one of those necessary falsehoods? We want one single noble lie which will be believed by everybody, including the rulers ideally, but failing that, the rest of the city. What kind of thing do you mean? A very familiar story of Phoenician origin. In the past, so the poets tell us and we believe, it happened in several places, but it has not happened in our time, and I don't even know if it could happen. People would take a lot of persuading. You seem a bit reluctant to tell your story, he said. With good reason.
So, I think I'm going to stop trying to do the combo through Ash. I am realizing Ash is very awkward against this deck. It's very hit or miss. You just hit a random engine card and kind of pray, is what it seems like. Which kind of sucks. Probably just always hit this. Not always, though. Oh, it's so weird.
As you will see when I do tell you. Don't worry, he said. Tell it. Very well. I will. Though I don't know how I shall have the nerve or find the right words. I have to try and persuade, first of all, the rulers themselves and the soldiers, and then the rest of the city, that the entire upbringing and education we gave them, their whole experience of it, happening to them, was, after all, merely a dream, something they imagined, and that in reality they spent that time being formed and raised deep within the earth, themselves, their weapons, and the rest of the equipment which was made for them. When the process of making them was complete, the earth, their mother, released them, And now it is their duty to be responsible for defending the country in which they live against attack, just as they would defend their mother or nurse, and to regard the rest of the citizens as their brothers, born from the earth. No wonder you were so embarrassed about telling us your lie. Yes, I had good reason, I said, but you must listen to the second half of the story as well. You are all brothers, our story will tell them, all of you in the city. But when God made you, he used a mixture of gold in the creation of those of you who were fit to be rulers, which is why they are the most valuable. He used silver for those who were to be auxiliaries, and iron and bronze for the farmers and the rest of the skilled workers.
I feel like...
Most of the time, you will father children of the same type as yourselves, but because you are all related, occasionally a silver child may be born from a golden parent, or a golden child from a silver parent, and likewise any type from any other type. The first and most important instruction God gives the rulers is that the thing they should be the best guardians of, the thing they should keep the most careful eye on, is the compound of these metals in the souls of the children. If their own child is born with a mixture of bronze or iron in him, they must feel no kind of pity for him, but give him the position in his society his nature deserves, driving him out to join the skilled workers or farmers. On the other hand, any children from those groups born with a mixture of gold or silver should be given recognition and promoted either to the position of guardian or to that of auxiliary. There is a prophecy, God tells them, that the end of the city will come when iron or bronze becomes its guardian. Well, that's the story. Can you think of any possible way of getting people to believe it? No, he said, not the actual people you tell it to, but their children might, and their children after them, and the rest of the population in later generations. Even that might help them to care more about the city and one another. I think I see what you're getting at. Anyway, let that turn out as popular belief and tradition will have it. Our job now is to arm these earth-born warriors of ours and lead them forth with the rulers at their head. Let them go and look for the best place in the city to put their camp, a place from which they can most easily control their own citizens, if any of them refuse to obey the laws or repel any external threats in the event of some enemy coming down on them like a wolf on the fold. When they have set up their camp, they can sacrifice to the appropriate gods, and then organize their sleeping accommodation. Does that sound right? Yes, he said. Should it be the kind of accommodation which will give them adequate shelter, both in winter and summer? Of course. This is their home you're talking about, I take it? Yes, I said, but a home fit for soldiers, not for businessmen. What is the difference in your view? I'll try and tell you. When shepherds are breeding dogs as protectors of their flocks, the worst possible disaster and disgrace, I imagine, is to breed dogs whose nature and training are such that lack of discipline, hunger, or some fault of character leads them to try to attack the sheep themselves and start behaving like wolves instead of dogs. Yes, of course, that's a disaster. In that case, we must guard in every way we can against our auxiliaries doing the same sort of thing to the citizens. After all, they are stronger than the citizens. We don't want them behaving like savage masters instead of friendly allies. Yes, we must guard against that, he said. Won't the best insurance against this be for them to have received a really good education? But they have received one, he said. And I said, we can't be sure of that, my dear Glaucon. What we can be sure about is what we have just been saying, which is that when it comes to gentleness, both to themselves and to those under their protection, then the right education, whatever that may be, is the key. Yes, we're right to be sure of that. In addition to this education, an intelligent observer may say the guardian
I also just realized I'm just gonna type it.
should be furnished with housing and a general standard of living which will not hinder them from becoming the best possible guardians, and which will give them no encouragement to do wrong in their dealings with the rest of the citizens. He may say that, and he'll be quite right. Well then, I said, do you agree with some suggestions about the way they should live and be housed, if this is what we want them to be like? In the first place, no one is to have any private property beyond what is absolutely essential. Secondly, no one is to have the kind of house or storeroom which cannot be entered by anyone who feels like it. For their subsistence, which should meet the needs of self-disciplined and courageous warrior athletes, they should impose a levy on the rest of the citizens, and receive an annual payment for their role as guardians, which leaves them with neither a surplus nor a deficiency. They should live a communal life, eating together like soldiers in camp. As for gold and silver, they should be told they already have in their souls all the time the divine gold and silver, given to them by the gods. They have no need of human gold in addition, and it is sacrilege to contaminate the divine gold they possess by adding to it a mixture of the perishable gold, since the gold in circulation among ordinary people has been the cause of much evil, whereas their own gold is pure. To them alone, out of the city's population, is it forbidden to handle or touch gold or silver, or be beneath the same roof, or wear it as jewellery, or drink from gold or silver cups. In this way they will be kept safe, and they will keep the city safe. Once they start acquiring their own land, houses and money, they will have become householders and farmers instead of guardians. From being the allies of the other citizens, they will turn into hostile masters. They will spend their whole lives hating and being hated, plotting and being plotted against. Their fears of enemies inside the city will be much more numerous and more acute than their fears of enemies outside the city. Both they, themselves, and the city will be heading at full speed towards imminent destruction. For all these reasons, shall we say that our guardians are to be provided with the housing and way of life we have described? Are these the laws we should enact, or not? They certainly are, said Glaucon. I take it our city, if it has been correctly founded, is wholly good. It can't help being. Clearly, then, it is wise, courageous, self-disciplined, and just. Clearly. Then, as we find each of these elements in it, those we have not yet found will constitute the remainder. Of course. With any four things, if we were looking for one of them in some place or other, and it was the first thing we caught sight of, that would be enough for us. But if we identified the other three first, then the one we were looking for would, ipso facto, have been identified as well, since clearly it could then only be whatever was left. You're right, he said. It's the same for us now. Since there actually are four elements, should we conduct our search in the same way? Yes, obviously. Well, I think the first one to catch the eye is wisdom, and it seems to have an unusual feature. What is that? It is truly wise, I think, this city we have described. It has good judgment, doesn't it? Yes. Now, this thing, judgment, is clearly knowledge of some sort. Good decisions, I take it, are the result of knowledge, not ignorance. Obviously. But our city contains many types of knowledge, of very different kinds. Of course it does. Is it the knowledge possessed by carpenters which entitle us to call our city wise and say it possesses good judgment? Certainly not, he said. That merely entitles us to call it good at carpentry. So a city is not to be called wise because of its knowledge and judgment in making the best possible wooden furniture. Absolutely not. How about its knowledge of making things out of bronze, or any other knowledge of that kind? No, nothing like that, he said. Nor the knowledge of how to grow crops from the soil, since that's called farming. So I believe. Is there then, I asked, among any of the citizens of this city we have just founded, any branch of knowledge which makes decisions about the city as a whole, deciding on the best policy towards its own members and towards other states, and not about one particular element in the city? There most certainly is. What is this knowledge, and in which group is it to be found? It is the knowledge possessed by the guardians, he said, and it is to be found in the rulers, whom we have just been calling the perfect guardians. And what is the label you give your city on the strength of this knowledge?
Crazy.
I call it sound in judgment and truly wise. So, which do you think our city will have more of? Metal workers or these true guardians? Metal workers, he said, far more. Of all the groups which have a branch of knowledge of their own, and which are identified as a group, wouldn't the guardians be the smallest? Easily the smallest. In which case, the wisdom of a city founded on natural principles depends entirely on its smallest group and element, the leading and ruling element, and the knowledge that element possesses. The class which can be expected to share in this branch of knowledge, which of all branches of knowledge is the only one we can call wisdom, is by its nature, apparently, the smallest class. That's very true, he said. Well, that's one of the four things we were looking for, and we've not only found it, I'm not quite sure how, but also found whereabouts in the city it is located. Nothing much wrong with the way it was found, as far as I'm concerned, he said. Courage next. It is not hard to see both the thing itself and the part of the city in which it is located, the part which gives the city the name courageous. Explain. No one classifying a city as cowardly or brave would look at any other part of it than the part which makes war in the city's defence and serves in its army. Yes, that's the only part anyone would look at, he said. I think the reason for that, I said, is that the cowardice or bravery of the rest of the population would not be enough to make the city itself cowardly or brave. No, it wouldn't. That leaves two things for us to identify in our city, I said. One is self-discipline. The other is the object of our entire investigation. Justice. Yes. Well, is there some way we can find justice without having to bother about self-discipline? I don't know, he said. I wouldn't want it to make its appearance too soon, if that means giving up the search for self-discipline. If I have any say in the matter, please examine self-discipline first. Very well. My first impression is that it is more like a harmony or musical mode than the other two. In what way? Self-discipline, I take it, is a kind of order. They say it is a mastery of pleasures and desires, and a person is described as being in some way or other master of himself. And there are other clues of the same sort in the way it is talked about, aren't there? Indeed there are, he said. But isn't the phrase master of himself an absurdity? The master of himself must surely also be slave to himself, and the slave to himself must be master of himself. It's the same person being talked about all the time. Of course. What this way of speaking seems to me to indicate is that in the soul of a single person there is a better part and a worse part. When the naturally better part is in control of the worse, This is what is meant by master of himself. It is a term of approval. But when as a result of bad upbringing or bad company, the better element is too small and is overwhelmed by the volume of the worse element, this is a matter for reproach. They call a person in this condition a slave to himself and undisciplined. Yes, I think that is what it indicates, he said. Now, if you take a look at this new city of ours, you will find one of these situations prevailing. You will admit that it can quite legitimately be called mistress of itself, if something in which the better rules the worse can be called self-disciplined and master of itself. Yes, when I take a look at our city, he said, you are right. But you also find the whole range and variety of desires, pleasures, and pains, particularly in children, women, slaves, and among so-called free men in the majority of ordinary people. You certainly do. Whereas simple, moderate desires, which are guided by rational calculation, using intelligence and correct belief, are things you come across only among a few people, those with the best natural endowment and the best education. True, he said. Well, do you see the same qualities in your city? Are the desires of the ordinary majority controlled by the desires and wisdom of the discerning minority? Yes, they are. So if any city can be called the mistress of its pleasures and desires and mistress of itself, this one can. It certainly can, he said. In which case, can't we also call it self-disciplined in all these respects? Very much so. What is more, if agreement is to be found among rulers and ruled in any city about which of them is to rule, it is to be found in this one. Don't you think? I couldn't agree more. Well then, when they agree in this way, in which of the two groups of citizens will you say the self-discipline is located, in the rulers or in the ruled? In both, I suppose. See what a plausible prediction we made just now, I said, when we compared self-discipline to a harmony of some sort. Explain. It is not the same as courage and wisdom. Each of those was located in a particular part, yet one of them made the whole city wise, and the other made it brave. Self-discipline does not operate in the same way. It extends literally throughout the entire city, over the whole scale, causing those who are weakest, in intelligence if you like, or in strength, or again in numbers, wealth, or anything like that, together with those who are strongest, and those in between, to sing in unison. So we would be quite justified in saying that self-discipline is this agreement about which of them should rule, a natural harmony of worse and better, both in the city and in each individual. I quite agree, he said. Very well. 3 of the qualities have been identified in our city, or such is our impression at any rate. What can the remaining quality be which allows a city to share in excellence? Because clearly this is going to be justice. Clearly. Now, Glaucon, this is the moment for us to position ourselves, like huntsmen in a ring round the thicket. We must concentrate and make sure justice does not escape. We don't want it to vanish and disappear from view. It's obviously here somewhere, so keep your eyes open and try your hardest to see where it is. If you see it first, give me a shout. Some hope, he said.
I wish this card said banish their grave, because I would just SP banish this card. It'd be so clean. Unfortunate.
No, I'm afraid the only help I'm going to be to you is if you want a follower, someone who can see things when they're pointed out to him. Say a prayer then, and follow me. I will. Just you lead the way, he said. The place is impenetrable, I said, and full of shadows, and it's certainly dark. Not an easy place to dislodge our quarry from. Still, we must go on. Yes, we must. And then I caught sight of it. "Ha ha! Over here, Glaucon!" I cried. "This looks like the trail. I think our quarry is not going to escape us after all." "That's good news," he said. "We've been complete idiots." "In what way?" "We're fine ones. It's been lying here under our noses all this time. The principle we laid down right at the start when we first founded our city as something we must stick to throughout. This, I think, or some form of it, is justice. The principle we laid down, and often repeated if you remember, was that each individual should follow, out of the occupations available in the city, the one for which his natural character best fitted him." Yes, we did say that. And we have often heard others say, and have often said ourselves, that doing one's own job and not trying to do other people's jobs for them is justice. Yes, we have said that. Well, it looks, my friend, as if in some way or other, justice is this business of everyone performing his own task. Do you know what makes me think that? No? Tell me. I think the remaining element in the city, besides the virtues we've been looking at, self-discipline, courage and wisdom, is the thing which gave all the others the power to come into being, and the thing whose continued presence keeps them safe once they have come into being. We said earlier that justice would be the one left over if we could only find the other three. Yes, it would have to be, he said. Now, if we had to decide, I said, which of these elements would do most to make our city good by its inclusion, that would be a difficult decision. Is it the agreement of the rulers and the ruled? Or the preservation in the ranks of the warriors of an opinion approved by law about which things are to be feared and which are not? Or the wisdom and protectiveness we find in the rulers? Or does the largest contribution to making the city good come from the presence, in child and woman, slave and free man, in skilled craftsman, ruler and ruled, of the principle that each single individual is to perform his own task without troubling himself about the tasks of others? Yes, that would be a difficult decision, he said. Bound to be. So, as a means of producing an excellent city, the ability of everyone to perform his own function is apparently a strong competitor with the city's wisdom, self-discipline, and courage. Very much so. Now, see if you agree with me about the next step. If a carpenter tried to do the job of a shoemaker, or a shoemaker the job of a carpenter, either because they exchanged tools and positions in society, or because one person tried to do both jobs, do you think in general that changes of this sort would do much harm to the city? No, not really, he said. But I imagine it's different when someone who is naturally a skilled worker or businessman of some kind is puffed up by wealth, popularity, strength, or something like that, and tries to enter the warrior class, or when one of the warriors tries to enter the decision-making and guardian class without being up to it. If these people exchange tools and positions in society, or if one person tries to do all these jobs at the same time, then I think you will agree with me that this change and interference on their part is destructive to the city. Yes, it certainly is. It is the interference of our three classes with one another, then, and interchange between them, which does the greatest harm to the city and can rightly be called the worst crime against it. Absolutely. Isn't injustice the name for the greatest crime against one's own city? Of course. That, then, is what injustice is. Conversely, its opposite, the ability of the commercial, auxiliary and guardian classes to mind their own business, with each of them performing its own function in the city, this will be justice, and will make the city just. Yes, I think that's exactly how it is, he said. And is a just man just, Glaucon, in the same way?
So I think Nib actually cooks this deck. It's kind of crazy. When I was playing against the deck, didn't feel like it was very good. But it actually is pretty good. That's tough. It's actually like auto game every hand, almost.
Way a city was just? He is. We haven't at any point forgotten, I hope, that the city was just when each of the three elements in it was performing its own function. No, I don't think we've forgotten that, he said. In that case, we must also remember...
Said nah isn't real because a ritual spell. Doesn't really do anything though. Gives me this. Okay. You just don't make the link to play around Nib. Yeah, some hands can afford to. But other hands you won't have enough interruptions. Fire King will just OTK you anyways. So you may as well play into it or you just die. Anyhow.
Remember that each one of us will be just and perform his own proper task when each of the elements within him is performing its proper task. Yes, we must certainly remember that. Isn't it appropriate for the rational element to rule because it is wise and takes thought for the entire soul, and appropriate for the spirited element to be subordinate, the ally of the rational element?
But okay, I'm gonna hop off. I'm getting tired. I'm starting to not think straight, so the testing's starting to lose value. But okay, I'll be back tomorrow. Hopefully my voice is better so I can actually just be normal. Alright. I'm gonna raid someone.
Yes? Won't a combination, as we said, of musical and physical education make these two elements concordant? They will bring the rational part to a higher pitch with their diet of improving stories and studies, while at the same time toning down the spirited part by gentle encouragement, calming it by means of harmony and rhythm. They certainly will, he said. When these two elements are brought up on a diet of this kind, when they truly receive the teaching and education appropriate to them, then the two of them will exercise control over the desiring element, which in any individual is the largest element in the soul, and left to itself the most insatiable where material goods are concerned. They will keep a close eye on it to make sure the satisfaction of the body's so-called pleasures doesn't encourage it to grow great and strong, stop performing its own function, and throw the life of all of them into confusion by its attempt to enslave and rule over elements which it is not naturally equipped to rule over. They will indeed, he said, a very close eye. Aren't these two elements also